Welcome along to this episode of the Master Builders podcast. Very delighted to have Greg Durkin, the Group Manager of Education and Stakeholder Engagement at BCITO. It's a very long title, Greg.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Well, look, we're recording this on Monday, the 20th of April. This is a very fluid time for us around COVID-19. There are expected to be announcements around changes in level of lockdown, etc. this afternoon, but we'll have a discussion today based on what we currently know is happening. First thing, bit of insight from you, Greg. What's lockdown been like? Number one question, what's been your favourite meal?
Well, I'm the cook in our house, so I'd have to say that a favourite meal was probably homemade hamburgers. The family loves them, so it's sort of close to having takeaways, but slightly healthier.
Nice. And did we go complex gourmet? Was there layers of bacon and chicken and cheese and gherkins, or do we like the good old Kiwi classic?
Oh, a bit of both. I've got a bit of a mixed bag. There'll be ones that say that there's no place for salad, and others will say that, oh no, let's just put everything green in there that we can possibly get. So, hey, it's all on the bench. They just fill their own and get on with it.
Very good, very good. And during this time in lockdown, what have you been able to do around your physical health and, most importantly, your mental health?
Well, yeah, I thought my physical health would be helped by the fact if I got my tools out and did a bit of building. That didn't actually help my mental health very much because I had to remember how to do half of it. But it was good. It was good fun. My son, who's is a civil engineer, who's living with us at the moment, he was my hammer hand. So yeah, it was quite interesting to have an engineer looking over your shoulder and second guessing everything you do. But no, that was good, and that was great for mental health. Lots of walking, just getting out there. I think that, it's been an opportunity for us to do some stuff that we weren't doing before.
Great. And BCITO, you're a learning-focused organisation. What have you learnt during lockdown?
Well, I've learnt that actually you don't all need to be in the same office at the same time to make progress. And I've also learnt people adapt really quickly. I've been amazed at the way that BCITO staff have pivoted. That's an interesting word, that pivoting. But they've managed to pivot to provide employers and particularly our learners with support. And yeah, I've been pretty impressed with that.
Great. And do you want to give us some of the insights to what you've done in that pivot and how you are helping out both trainees and employers?
Well, I think that the first thing has been to actually get to grips with their situation, and there were a number of, and still are a number of people that are pretty concerned about what the future might look like. To say this is unprecedented times is a bit worn out, but it is, because we don't have a precedent. We don't have a crystal ball to say it's going to be this or it's going to be that. And I think that there are a lineup of economists at the moment who are telling us what they think it's going to be. The old joke about economists managed to successfully, in 5 examples, predicted the last 2 recessions. So it's just a lineup of people trying to tell us what the world's going to be like. However, yeah, I think there are some absolute realities about that. I was reading this morning a comment from BDO, which I thought was quite fascinating, and they were stating some of the realities. So we had a housing and building shortage prior to COVID-19. We had an enormous amount of work in the pipeline. We had a lot of people that were engaged in the industry and willing to get on with that work. And I think that some of those things don't change. There are some things that do change, and that's going to be the level of confidence and investment that people have in the marketplace. And I think the link between building activity and property prices is probably something that people need to be taking pretty close attention to. That said, the construction industry has a habit of going into very high highs and very low lows, and going between those points quite quickly. So I think that's going to be there's going to be some need for some employers and some employees to adapt quite quickly. So the things that we've been doing to support industry, one of the things we've done in full marks to Master Builders, you've done a great job of this as well, is we've provided no-nonsense information sources up there so employers who can, and certainly who want to engage in understanding COVID-19 and the support that they can get have had a way of doing that. So it's not everyone is a member of an industry association. We have 15 industries under our coverage, and some of those industries don't have an industry association at all. So those employers need to be able to get access to that information. They need to understand what their responsibilities are as an employer, what assistance, and I've got to say, I think we could all take our hat off to the government thus far in terms of their support. What they do going forward, I think, however, will be the measure.
Absolutely. If we were to project forward 6, 12, 18, 24 months here, how do you think the industry is going to evolve? If you could just polish up your crystal ball a little bit, Greg, and see what you think might happen, particularly obviously around the focus for training our next crop of construction workers. What do you think might change going forward as a result of this current situation?
It's going to be interesting to see, I think, how industry adapts in a post-COVID environment. So if we, for instance, went towards more integrating more social distancing into our work, and that seems rather strange to me, being a tradie in the past and knowing how construction sites work. I think that's going to bring some quite interesting challenges, but out of those challenges, I think there's going to be some learnings. So the way that we consider how sites operate, the way that we maximise the human capability input into a site will be different. So unlike, the warehouse, they get a container of fishing rods in from China and they put a sticker on them and put them on the shelf and sell them. They don't add any value. Construction, everything in construction is a process of taking a raw material and adding some brilliant human capital to that raw material to produce something that essentially makes the client's dreams come true. Some of those dreams are enormously valuable and significant in people's lives. So that culture of investing in property and wanting to have great homes and houses, that will still remain. It'll just be moderated in different ways, and it's moderated by available resources and the money that people have got. I think that that ebbs and flows, that goes up and down. But the way that we do that and the way that we shape our buildings will be different. And I think that I won't be surprised if we see more componentry or more of a component-based approach to construction. That doesn't mean that everything is going to be prefabricated and panelised, but I think that there's a continuum here.
Yes.
And somewhere along that continuum, at one end, you've got a construction company that does a lot of its own work, does a lot of stuff, and at the other end you've got a highly panelised, componenterised type approach. I think that the median of those two is going to swing more towards a component-based approach. It makes sense in terms of that social distancing and managing costs, particularly with the volume of and the types of houses that are going to be built.
Sure. And we know that more component approach, it helps with speed of consents, it helps with speed of construction, it can help with the cost base around construction because they are more componentized. And look, completely agree, it's certainly a continuum. I was talking with a neighbour across the fence at more than 2 metres, of course, recently, and he is, by his own admission, is a crusty old carpenter. And he said, look, just in how much he's seen the industry change when he was an apprentice probably 40 years ago. He said they went to site and they built everything. They built all of the window sashes. There was nothing that came to site pre-made. And now if you think we're on that continuum now, all our joinery arrives ready, our spouting and roofing is componentized, all those kind of things that happen. We use these specialist trades to get things done. So we've already seen an evolution, and I think that evolution will go a bit faster now. So what should both employers and trainees, what should they be thinking about in terms of their skill development to help be ready for that, a continued move along that continuum, do you think?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, and I think they're different groups. So employers, I think, should be thinking about the long game. And there is some short pain here, and a part of that is going to be in terms of expected levels of productivity and profitability. So they're coming off a real high. And so if they think that high is going to be maintained in a post-COVID environment for some time, then I think that they are in for a surprise. I don't think anybody's expecting that. However, it's the degree of drop back or and how they manage that, which is important. So the industry goes through these dips, and this is just a real short, sharp one. The degree to which they can weather that storm, I think, is very, very important, because that capital, in terms of that human capital on the other side of this, is going to be the thing that they're going to need to recover the quickest. When we went through the GFC, there were employers who didn't train and those who did. Those who did ended up with two things. They ended up with a skilled workforce, and they ended up with a broad workforce. And this is where the other group that you mentioned, the apprentice, is the important one. The degree to which they engage in a qualification which gives them a broad base across the industry that they're interested in is important, because that makes them a viable labour unit across a multiple set of circumstances. Typically in times of plenty, when we're very busy, the construction industry tends to contract out and use a lot of specialisation. When we go through times of a recession and quiet, we tend to bring those skills back in again. Those employers that did well during the GFC are those that already had that skill base. They'd already trained those apprentices and they'd trained those trade staff, so they had those broad range of skills. Instead of outsourcing them, they could do them themselves. Those are the things that I think are really important in this decision making about who employers retain and the skills that they build in those people during that time. I was talking to a couple of painting employers the other day, and they were saying to me that the best time for training apprentices is during a quiet time. They trained during the GFC. When we came out of the GFC, they were in such a strong market position that they were able to capitalise on that.
Spot on. And Greg, part of your title is about stakeholder engagement. Tell me, what are the stakeholders that BCITO recognises and that you think about in this situation?
So our stakeholders are mainly our members, and they are the industries. So the industries that we serve, because we're an industry-owned and based organisation. So we place a lot of value and a lot of time in making sure that we understand what our stakeholders want. One of my common questions is, so what's keeping you up at night? Because those are the things that often we have or can be a part of the solution. So part of that, I introduced some work about 5 years ago in terms of workforce development, because I was a little bit tired of the fact that even though construction's a really large part of the economy, the government departments weren't really paying a lot of attention to understanding what were the inner workings and what were the inner demands of our workforces. So because it's just not simply good enough to say, oh, we should train more. That's just not good enough. We should know what are the skills that we need to be training for, and where do we need them, and when do we need them. So right people, right skills, right place, right time. So we introduced some quite structured review of and planning around workforce development, and I'm really proud of the fact that we've now rolled that out to the point now where BCITO has just recently provided the Otago councils in that region with advice on, so what are the labour workforce demands going forward. Understanding that is a really important part of the future of the New Zealand construction industry, and all of that information that we provide for industries is available on our website. If you just search under workforce development plans or strategies on the BCITO website, it's free, it's there for people to use. And part of that planning says, well, not only here's what the industry looks like. Oh, sure, some of those numbers have changed in the last month or so, no doubt. But some of the underlying skills in terms of and issues that the industry needs to address haven't. Things like regional drift, things like environmental issues, things like technology introduction, all of those things are facets of the future of tomorrow that our employers are grappling with all the time. So we're providing some quite interesting information and advice around that.
Spot on. And you used the word pivot earlier on. I think many organisations out there at the moment are going, how do we pivot through this in a changed environment? What is it that BCITO as an organisation, how are you guys pivoting? How are you adjusting to this this situation?
One of the things that we've stepped up with, we were already working on this anyway, was providing more electronically delivered materials to support our learners. So we've stood up in pretty record time an LMS which has some pretty innovative learning opportunities in it. There's quite a bit of fun in there. There's a good number of quizzes. Some of them are a lot harder than I thought they'd be easy, but I tried to answer a few and I think, oh, I'm scratching my head here. So they're good fun, but they're a way of challenging our people and helping our learners to engage with our materials. We've also taken the brave step of also introducing quite a number of third-party resources into that LMS as well, so people can look at proprietary-based YouTube products or websites or so forth. And while they're not ours, we haven't developed them, we think that they are materials or information sources which are reasonably interesting. They are relevant to the New Zealand building industry, and they will help our learners, or they'll help anybody who wants to review them. So just helpful stuff like that. The other thing is we've pivoted quite quickly in terms of we're traditionally an organisation of 200 field staff who turn up and knock on the site door and visit employers and apprentices. We haven't been able to do that during lockdown, and so we've pivoted by our field staff spending a lot of time on the phones talking with apprentices and employers, and a lot of those conversations have been very fruitful. And we've been able to understand the pressures that those people are under and also help them by directing them to where they can get help, where they can get assistance.
Superb. And have you got a sense from the field staff about the kind of the top of mind questions that are coming for both employers and trainees?
There's a range. But I'd say the biggest one would be, what's the future going to be like in 4 or 5 or 6 months' time when we get over the busyness of now, and how stable will the economy be in terms of making sure that it doesn't all sort of go to hell in a handbasket. So those are key questions that I think everyone is asking. I think there are a number of people who are saying, what does this mean for me? They've got a mortgage, they've got a young family, or don't necessarily need to have a young family to have a mortgage, but if you know what I mean, there's a lot of things going on. It's complicated. People are complicated, and so most of our employers understand that and have been very sympathetic to that and have done everything they can. We're really proud of them.
Fantastic. And I'm certainly no economist, but I do look at some positive factors. I think we do have a lot of pent-up demand. We do have a whole lot of approved consents that are not constructed yet. And yes, some of those will fall away because of no longer being able to get finance, etc. But it certainly won't be all of them. So there will still be those in there. If you had have asked almost anyone in the New Zealand population, would they be up for a 3 or 4% mortgage? If you had asked them that 10 years ago, they would have gone, I'd build forever on that kind of money. So I think there are still some factors in there that are going to present opportunity and allow construction organisations to succeed. Not every one of them, but there will still be some opportunity. And I think our fiscal policy has been pretty strong in New Zealand. We haven't allowed people to over-capitalise. So I think, like we saw in the last recession around GFC, we saw a small dip in the house values, but ultimately it wasn't a massive dive because people are invested. They've got a lot of equity involved themselves. They don't want to walk away from that, so they're prepared to wait it out until things come good again, which they've proven to come good every recession in history. Hey, look, I'm not suggesting it's all going to be brilliant and happy days going forward, but I don't think it's all going to be a disaster either. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity and continuing to train people. So, that example you used of the painting company that trained some people in their downtime so they were ready when things came on stream again. I think it's fantastic advice.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because people who have been in business for a while will tell you it's just as hard to manage a company in growth than it is in a time of quiet. And often in times of growth, companies do find themselves quite stretched, quite undercapitalised, and you can only make that dollar do so many things. So I think that some of the prudency which you exercise in both of those times, it's just good sound business techniques that you should be putting in effect. Don't be a stranger to your bank manager. Don't be a stranger to your accountant. Those people, most of them are pretty clever and they can give you good advice. I think it's 93% of our employers members, and we have at any one time about 6,500, 7,000 of them, training 12 or so, 13,000 apprentices. So about 93% of those are 5 staff or less. So the van you see driving down the road with 3 people sitting in the front seat, that is the firm. So, we've always got to remember that it's a very cottage industry, and those cottage industries are made up of really great people. They're passionate, they absolutely care for their staff, and they want to do the best for them. And training's just a key part of that. But we're very mindful of the fact of all of the pressures that come with running an SME, running a small business. It's difficult.
It is. And Greg, what you rightly said, stay in contact with your accountant, etc. I think what we've observed with a number of the business owners that we've worked with directly and Master Builders members is that customers and staff also appreciate open communication. And sometimes that communication is very tough messages, but we've seen it reinforced time and time again that people have, even when they've had challenging news about redundancies or reduced wages, that they've actually just appreciate the business owner being open and upfront about the situation, because once they know, they can actually then deal with the situation themselves. And likewise for customers, staying in contact with them and understanding their situation, so they can either get back to work or make alternative plans around what's going on with that customer as well. So I think communication is a big one.
Full credit to you as well. Master Builders have done a really good job in making sure that there's connectivity and that support, that collegial support, being able to pick up the phone and talk to that colleague down the road who is in possibly a very similar situation to you, is an immensely supportive thing to do. You mentioned before in terms of, what am I doing for my mental health and well-being, and that's a really key part of getting through this as well. We're people, and so we bring, all of those emotions and people things to everything that we do. So having that ability to reach out to someone, a colleague, a tradie down the road who you know and trust, that's really important, and your organisation does a great job of that.
And thank you for that, Greg. And I think also within your own organisation, we've got this situation where things have changed. We might find that some younger members of our team, possibly even the apprentices, have more technology savviness than maybe us as business owners who are a bit older. Talk to your team. Go, hey, we're in a new world here. What opportunity do you see? How could we use technology to interact with our clients differently, or with our subbies or our building merchants or whatever? Get them to throw some ideas around, because they're the ones that are very tech savvy at this stage.
Absolutely.
Hey, nice one, Greg. Really appreciate you joining us on the Master Builders podcast today. Thanks for the work you and BCITO are doing to continue to support the employers and the trainees during this time. Stay healthy, mate, and keep those burgers coming.
Yeah, well done. Thanks a lot.